Good morning. This is the third day of VMworld. I hope you've had a great time. Today we are going to talk about operationalizing NSX for vSphere environment. My name is Saurabh Shah. I'm a product manager for NSX, and one of my areas of responsibility is operations. I have a co-presenter today, and I'm going to let him introduce himself.
So thank you. My name is Angel Vilar, and I am the technical counterpart of Saurabh. We both together work in the operations side of NSX, and we hope to deliver an interesting session for you guys.
All right. So we have a pretty great agenda, and I'll quickly go over to that. So we've really broken down this session into two aspects, the non-technical aspects of operationalizing NSX and some of the technical aspects. We'll begin the session by talking about some of the methodologies, which will help you think about how to operationalize NSX in your environment. We do these workshops, what we call operational transformation workshops on an ongoing basis, and that typically takes at least a day. So we've tried to compress and condense this and give you still a good high-level overview of these methodologies, and we'll certainly provide you more resources if you're more interested and you want to learn more about these methodologies. We'll cover some of the best practices that we've seen in some of our production customers. So all the best practices that we talk about are really the work of our engagement with several of our customers over the past few years. And we've heard your feedback. A lot of people want VMworld sessions to be more technical. So we made sure that the major part of the second, the technical aspect of this presentation focuses more on the tools so that you can learn what are the tools that you can use natively within NSX, VMware products, and external products that you can use to have your day two operations when you operationalize NSX. So that's kind of like the non-technical and the technical agenda for the session today. All right, so if you've been to some of the other presentations, you've probably seen this. This is important from an operations point of view because we've had an incredible growth of customers and deployments over the last year. We've literally had 100% growth in our deployment from 1,300 to 2,600, which means these people have successfully been able to operationalize NSX in their environment. Roughly have 2 new customers every day. And what's even more amazing is the NSX certified professionals that continue to grow along with NSX deployments. And these are professionals that have chosen to learn a cutting edge technology, and these are pretty vocal. They're not only there to learn new technology, but also to empower and give back to the community to help other people grow as well with NSX. And we hope that our certified professionals continue to grow as we continue to grow NSX. So the key point I wanted to drive with the earlier slide and this one is really that some of these methodologies that we are going to talk about in the next few slides is based on our work that we've done with several hundred of our customers. These customers have from various different verticals and various different deployment sizes. So these are really practical examples that we have based on our engagement with some of our large customers that we are sharing with you right now. And some of these changes are really things that you can go back and do in your organizations right now. And you really don't have to wait for anything to take these next steps with minimal changes to your infrastructure. So that's something important to keep in mind. And what we term this as an operational transformation of NSX. All right, so before we even begin operational transformation, a fundamental question that you need to ask yourself and take a step back and say, why are we doing this? Why are we going through this journey of operationalizing and virtualizing your data center? You already have virtualization. Why are you doing networking and compute? You already have compute virtualization. Why are you doing network virtualization right now? So the really key benefit that you have from NSX is that NSX provides you with a significantly better OpEx and CapEx. The speed at which you deliver application goes up drastically. This means faster time to market, which could be key on a competitive standpoint for your industry. It could also mean value for your business, your company, and your customers. NSX also brings consistency and reproducibility. This means that you can have more operational efficiency from your environment. And finally, you have improved security, which means that with NSX, you're no longer protecting just the exterior of your data center, but you're really protecting the interior, the brain behind your data center, and have an increased and world-class east-west security within your environment when you deploy NSX. So these are really the high high-level key benefits that you get from NSX and operationalizing NSX in your environment. All right, so with that, I'm going to introduce the operational model. So we at VMware have worked with several of our customers over the last 3 years to come up with this model, what we call NSX operational maturity model. So this model really stands from 3 key elements of operationalizing NSX, which is people, processes, and tools, and what I call them the 3 pillars of our operational model. So this gives you a way to think about how to operationalize NSX. Now, before we begin talking about this model, it is important to realize that each and every organization is unique. Each and every team is unique, which means all these best practices that we are going to cover, they are not meant to be one size fits all. Take what is applicable to your teams, and given its unique goals, priorities, and organizational structure, and see how they benefit you in your organization. Okay, so with that, we're going to first talk about people. When we start talking about people in operationalizing NSX, some of the questions that you may have and some of the questions that we often get are, who should take on NSX, right? What does my organizational structure look like once I have network virtualization in me? Because I already have my physical infrastructure teams, I have my virtualization teams, everything is well laid out. How does my organizational structure look like once I take NSX, right? What are the different roles and responsibilities? My people right now, they know exactly what they're doing. Now you're bringing in NSX virtualization. What are the different roles and responsibilities that my team members are supposed to have? So let's go and answer some of these questions, and maybe you also have some of these questions. So let's go and answer some of these questions and see how you could answer it for your organization. So network virtualization, what fundamentally it does is it takes your networking knowledge or all the networking constructs for network and security from your physical and moves it up into a virtualization layer for you to consume it completely from a software-defined point of view. So your physical infrastructure does not go away. This is a key point. Like, no matter what physical infrastructure you have, you can operationalize NSX on any physical infrastructure. So all the investments that you have in your current physical infrastructure, they can stay. This is not rip and replace of some of your physical environment to take on NSX, right? But if you think about it, all the networking constructs that you have in your physical environment, such as your stateful firewalls, your switching, your routing, your port mirroring, all these constructs are still available in the virtual environment, except that it's operationally more efficient to consume and use these applications as you have agility and speed within your data center. So virtualization technology, if you think about it, it's been around for more than a few decades. It's mature, it's here to stay, and it's pervasive, which means that all your existing team members with their current knowledge about networking and security and a little bit more knowledge about virtualization, they already are they already have the right expertise to be able to take on NSX. When you think about organizational structure, one of the key points I want to mention upfront is that you do not need to make any operational change, major organizational changes in order to take on NSX. With 2,600 deployments, roughly 4 deployments every day over the past 1 year, we've dealt with companies that have various different type of organizational structure. So you could be in an IT organization. So you could be in a traditional IT organization or a blended hybrid cloud type of IT organization, and you can take on NSX. So for example, let's say if you are in an organization which has networking, compute, storage, and security operate independently in your organization, and that's fine. You can take on NSX. Your networking team can take on overlay, routing, switching, and your security team can take on microsegmentation, east-west firewalling, edge firewalling, right? We've seen with companies that have cloud initiatives that have formed smaller cloud teams. These cloud teams often comprise of members that are borrowed from all the other infrastructure teams in order to form a cloud team that can deliver a cloud-first applications. Sometimes you don't really have to always have these team members be a part of the cloud team. You can have a dotted line representation from your individual infrastructure services team that forms the cloud team. We've also seen in organizations that have used some form of a rotational program. so that everyone gets an experience of how a cloud environment can be used and operated. So you can change your mindset from infrastructure to more of services. So there are really various different ways of thinking about organizational structure when you take on NSX, and there is really no right answer. Our recommendation is that you form a blended cross-functional team that is self-sufficient, that is able to take on NSX and have common goals, have shared goals within that team, and they can measure the success of where you're getting. So try to form blended cross-functional teams when you take on NSX. That would definitely be our recommendation. And teams that have an end-to-end visibility and can fix all the issues end-to-end. So you have your architects, your designs, your engineers all be a part of the same team. And we are going to cover roles and responsibilities in the next slide. So that's really our recommendation when you think of organizational structure with NSX. Finally, when you think of roles and responsibilities, you may already have some of these roles and responsibilities defined. Think of these roles and responsibilities across your infrastructure. So across your networking, your storage, your security. Teams that we've seen successful with NSX and operationalizing NSX, they're not only cross-functional, but they're also cross-disciplinary, which means your same core team that's managing these applications has all these different roles as a part of the team. So you have an architect, you have an engineer, you have operations, be a part of that tight-knit team. That is a common goal. An important point that I would like to highlight over here, which has benefited a lot of people, is to think of operations beforehand. Have your operations team not be a part of the after discussion, but be a part of the original planning and design phase. This way, you're not really starting to dig a hole when there's a fire, right? You've already planned for it, and there are no surprises down the line. So that's really one key recommendation that I'd like to give from an operations point of view. Thinking about processes, IT organizations have processes which ensure that the services that you deliver can be managed and improved over time, right? One of the key differentiators you have with NSX is that you can automate some of these manual processes. And in some cases, you can even eliminate some of these processes and make it efficient, make your operational model more efficient, right? So I would like to challenge you and think about, in your organizations, what do you guys think? Do you think that the processes that you have currently within your organizations, are they the most efficient, or do you think that there is room for improvement? And if you think that there is room for improvement, when you take on NSX, that would be an awesome time to think about all your processes from a holistic point of view and say that, hey, how can we make these better now that we have power of virtualization? And that's going to fundamentally change the way you think about operations within your organization. I'll give you a great example of this. A lot of these companies have expensive change management processes, because when you make changes to an application, you may want to make sure that all the other applications are not affected, right? So one of the things that you could do with network virtualization is, during the design phase, if you're designing your application such that your networking, your security, and your application is a part of an isolated environment, you can be sure that when you're changing the application, you're not going to affect everything else. And this is the power that virtualization and software-defined networking and security can bring to you, right? So you can, with this model, depending on your organization, you can either completely eliminate some of these change management, or you can make it lightweight and make it more efficient as you go on. One thing that I would definitely say is, when you take on NSX, don't just keep your existing processes that you have and keep using it after virtualization. Because then you might degrade some of the value that NSX and virtualization provides to you. You might not get some of the cost benefits that you really can get with NSX and virtualization. So think about these processes holistically, and think about how you can do it better with virtualization. So just to mention some of the processes that you can think about your provisioning. Think about how you can do configuration management, change management. This is the example that I talked about. When you're changing policies for an application, do I really need to have to go through an expensive change management process, or can I design my application in an isolated manner that I can do this in a much more lightweight and with speed and agility? Think about your capacity management and incident management, right? So fundamentally, when you take on NSX, relook at all these processes and see what you can do better. How can you automate? How can you eliminate? Finally, one of the key points and the key value propositions of NSX is tooling. When you take on virtualization, when you take on NSX, think about what are the tools that you're going to standardize on. And this is the key value proposition of operationalizing NSX. As I mentioned before, NSX offers all the things, or most of the things that you have on the networking side, and offers them as a software, as a consumable service via APIs, right? And when you have this, you really want to think about how do I use these APIs to orchestrate my application delivery? How do I get out of doing manual provisioning to using tools that can provision my infrastructure and my application? How can I make sure that these tools can guarantee that I can repeatedly create applications with certain set of networking and security without knowing that, hey, every time I deploy, I don't have to worry that something is going to break because you've already tried and tested that in your environment before, right? So think about the tools that you want to settle based on your applications, based on your environment that you have, and see how you can orchestrate and automate those. So like I mentioned earlier, NSX provides all the network functions that you have with the powerful RESTful APIs. Everything that you can think of doing NSX in the GUI, you can do that with a RESTful API. So if you are a company that is using DIY and you want to have your own set of APIs and you want to do advanced integration with applications and networking and security, leverage some of the tools that we already have. You can use RAML, you can use Python. If you are a Windows, if your IT team is Windows experts, you can use Power NSX or Ansible. So these are like the cloud management tools that you can use to orchestrate and automate your infrastructure and your applications. If you really want to go with out-of-box solutions and you don't want to spend that initial time leveraging and writing some of this infrastructure as a code, you can go with some out-of-box solutions that VMware has, right? So you can have vRealize Orchestrator, vCloud Director, vRealize Automation. If you want to go open source, we also integrate with OpenStack, right? So the key here is to think about, when you take on NSX, think about how you're going to orchestrate and automate your environment. And that is what is going to get you a huge operational benefit, because you can make your applications, make your infrastructure repeatable. You can test it and know that when you're deploying applications, everything is just going to work because you've already tested it up, maybe a million times with a CI/CD pipeline like Jenkins or something, right? So this is a very high-level overview of the operational transformation model. This kind of gives you a way to think about how you would operationalize NSX in your environment. We really want you to, from a people's point of view, think about not having specialized operations. You can leverage some of the skills that you already have in your organization, and think about more blended cross-functional teams that are more focused on application delivery and service delivery as against infrastructure and maintaining infrastructure. From a process point of view, challenge some of your existing processes. They might be slow, they might be manual. Make them agile, make them standardized. And from a tooling point of view, think of replacing some of your legacy hardware-focused tools and think about how you are going to orchestrate and automate. You probably don't want to do the same manual steps over and over again. You probably want to automate and orchestrate and then move on to doing other interesting things. So this kind of provides you with a framework to think about how you would operationalize NSX. And every organization and every team will have different answers for it, and that's fine. The idea is to try this, do this in your environment, and figure out what is right for you. So this thing, operational transformation is a journey. And you can take this journey in a stepwise manner. Think about this as, you can start off with forming teams, a small team which takes on just one use case, one application, onboard it into an NSX environment, onboard it onto this virtual automated environment, and iterate through this to figure out what is the right formula for people, process, and tooling that works in your organization. Measure some of the benefits that you get compared to your application delivery in your traditional environments. And that is where you will tend to realize the power of NSX and virtualization. right? And once you're more comfortable with this model, you can onboard more applications to it, right? The key thing afterwards, after you have these certain applications and you measured path to success, is also to educate the other folks about the benefits that you've already seen in your environment, because that's going to make their life a whole lot easier. So the barrier to entry with NSX is really very low. If you have heard anywhere else that it's going to be really tough to operationalize NSX and bring on NSX, I would like to disagree and say that the barrier to entry with NSX is really very low. You can take this, try this today. If there is one thing when you step out of those doors, if there's one thing I would like to remember from today's presentation, it's that you can try it right now. All you have to do is find out that one use case, create an environment, test it, and see how it goes. Right? A lot of our customers that have been extremely successful with this operational model have been the ones which have that end vision in mind, and they're continuously working towards reaching that end goal. So you can start small, define your success, measure it, keep your end goal in mind, and keep going through this circle till you reach your end goal. And that's really the one key thing that I would like you to take out from today's presentation. Through this journey, you have various resources. I mean, I understand that we've just covered the tip of the iceberg, and I've given you a very high-level overview of what you can do with these models of people, process, and tools. There are various resources that you can consume. We have free webinars. We are also going to do a transformational workshop in the coming months. So if you're interested in having some of your team members attend it and ask questions, feel free and come talk to me after the seminar, and we can talk about how you can be a part of those workshops. But there are various resources that you can have if you want to go down this route of operationalizing your network virtualization, right? All right, so with that, we'll move on to the more fun technical aspects of NSX, and for that, I'll ask Angel to take over.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, good. So thank you, sir. So yeah, now we are focusing on the. We are going to see a set of NSX native operations tools, but instead of going through a list of them, we are going to see them in action in a troubleshooting environment exercise based in some of our customers' environments, right? So what we are going to do, we have an end user which is trying to access a web application and it fails. So our goal is to determine if there are issues in NSX preventing this application to work and to solve them. And for that, we are going to kind of play a small role play. So Saurabh will play the role of a layer 1 operations admin, and I will play the role of a networking and NSX administrator. So just before we start, how many of you have networking background in the room? Okay, good. Thank you. So, Saurabh, tell me, what do you know about this issue?
Yeah, so
Oh, we need both mics. I'm sorry.
Hello. Okay, so I'm new to NSX, Angel, and one of our engineers got really excited about the VMware IoT Pulse announcement yesterday, and he ended up spinning an application for an IoT application for Vegas casino providers, which he's calling casino providers. And with NSX, we are able to onboard that application, but it looks like there are some issues, and it's not up yet.
Okay.
So since I'm new to NSX, I was hoping this would be a great opportunity for me to learn about NSX. So what are the tools that I have that I can use to debug this casino provider application?
Okay, so first thing, we are doing video because that allows us to manage better timing, right? But as a network admin, what is the first thing you would do in a typical network situation like this? So at least me, I would check that what the user tells is right? We never trust the user. So you mentioned you mentioned that the application is called casino provider, so let's ping it.
I'm not offended.
And if we ping it, we can see it doesn't work, right? But at least we get the IP address where the web server sits. So when looking at this IP address, we know already that it sits in NSX because this is part of the IP block allocated for the NSX environment. I mean, you can do this looking at your info remedy, whatever tool you use in-house, or do it the old style with the ping, right? So ping might not be significant, so let's go and try the application itself. So it's taking some time to load. Okay, and finally, it will fail at some point. Okay, so it fails. So for now, we have been able to determine two things. One is that the application sits in NSX, and the other is that the user is right, the application doesn't work.
I told you.
Yeah?
Okay, so what can I use? Should we start off with like the traditional ping? Is there a ping within NSX that I can use?
So since we know the application sits in NSX, I guess a good starting point is to look at the overall health of the environment, right? And for that, we are going to use the NSX dashboard. So the NSX dashboard is a tool that provides this basic overall status of the infrastructure, so we can see the status of the management and control components, of the hosts. We can see if backups are being running, which is important. In case we have a disaster, we would like to have the most recent backup up and ready. We also get notifications on the services running on the edges, and we see the status of the distributed firewall, logical switches, etc. Right? So let's see what this tool says in our environment. So we go into the NSX console, and on the left menu we select dashboard, and this is the information we have. And also, it's not just information, but we can click on the icons and the links here, and we get contextual information. So, for example, on the manager, we can see this usage is low, it's 5%. We can see the services are up and running. We only have one controller, and if I click on it, yeah, it's deployed and running. This is good. But the thing is that when it turns yellow or red, it provides some hints where to start troubleshooting. Maybe it's a this latency issue. Maybe the controller has got disconnected, so we know where to go next. We can see there are 3 clusters in this environment, and one of them is not prepared. So let's check which one it is. That could be a potential issue. But it's not, right? It's the management cluster. The management cluster is not consuming NSX services, so we don't want it to be prepared. It's hosting vCenter, NSX Manager, controller, login site, whatever tool, but it's not consuming services, right? So we are good here. The backups are scheduled and I'm running good. And we have a VPN issue, so let's check details here as well. So we can see the VPN is happening on edge 1. Well, maybe not everybody can see it. So the issue is running on edge 1, which is the edge for our application. And it seems that the IPsec tunnel between these 2 IP addresses has gone down, right? So I mean, this is something we need to troubleshoot, but since we are accessing the application from the LAN, from the local area network, this is not impacting our app. And then here on the right side of the screen, we have the status of the distributed firewall. We can see there is an issue with a logical switch, so we can go into detail. And we can see there is a switch which is out of sync. Probably this is because there is another management tool doing networking changes in NSX, and this is something we need to avoid, right? We can solve this issue from the logical switches tab, but again, this is something that is not impacting our application. So overall, I would say that the information we get from the dashboard is that our environment looks quite healthy for our troubleshooting purposes. Okay, so
this seems great. I think I can use this to get an overall view of the basic overall view of the system and see if there are any red flags already before I go on to the next level of troubleshooting. Like I don't want to go down deep in the trenches and only know that some of the other elements of NSX have been down. So this is fairly useful.
Yeah, it's an overview, but still
but this didn't point to any of the issues for our troubleshooting.
So now we need to go deeper, right? And the first thing is to understand the topology, both the logical and the physical one. So on the right, we have the logical topology. So the user is coming through the local area network. The entry point in NSX is the NSX edge. Then the traffic should go into the distributed logical router and should be delivered at the web server. And since I'm part of this blended cross-functional team, I have the skills to determine that the edge and the web sit on the same host, right? Clear, no?
Yeah, makes sense.
So NSX looks healthy. We know the application sits in NSX. The first thing I would check now is if traffic is making it into NSX. We need to check if there is an NSX issue or not. There might be an issue on the LAN, so it could be not an issue in NSX, right? And for that, we are introducing another tool. We are using another tool, which is Central CLI, which is a tool that allows us to open a shell into the NSX manager and from there issue commands to retrieve information from all NSX components. So we can see routing tables from all routers. We can see MAC tables, app tables, and we can also do packet traces, which is what we are going to do now on the demo. So for now, let's go into the NSX manager shell. And one thing we need to do to run the trace is to enter in privilege mode. So we enter the typical enable command. Most network admins are used to it. And then we are using the debug packet capture command, right? So to this command, we need to provide several parameters. So we need to provide the host where the edge sits and the VNIC ID. The VNIC ID of the app link, of the interface where we want to take the trace. So we are not seeing it now, but these 2 parameters, we can get them easily with the show VM command, right? There is another command here. Next, we specify the direction of the trace. In this case, we are doing output, meaning traffic that leaves the network and goes into the VM. We could do input as well, or we can take parallel traces so that we get the full picture. And finally, we are specifying filtering parameters because the edge might be getting too much traffic, might be exposed to high amounts of traffic, and we don't want to trace it all. So we are only focusing on the traffic that has these two IP addresses, the one from the desktop VM and the one from the web server. So when we hit enter, the application starts, the trace starts, and the system gives back a session ID, which is the only parameter we will need from now on. And actually, if we look down here, we can see that the trace is stored in a pickup file named after the session ID, right? Thank you.
I know.
So once we have the trace running, we go back to our application and generate some traffic, right? And once some time has passed and we believe we have significant information already, we go back to NSX and we stop the trace by using the no debug packet capture command. And as the only parameter, we enter the session ID. And finally, the session is stopped. So once you have a trace, sort of what tools do you typically use in your team to look at traces, troubleshoot, and all that?
Yeah, I'm more of a visual person, so if I can use Wireshark, that'd be awesome.
That'd be awesome, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, from Central CLI, we can check the details of the trace here, right here, using the CLI. But also, we can copy since we have this pickup file here, we can copy it back to any station we want. By doing using the same command, debug packet capture command, and issuing a secure copy. So we need to specify the IP address and the user ID of the receiving computer. We need to enter the password, and a few seconds after, we get the pickup file in our desktop, right? And as you may guess from the icon, we can open it with Wireshark. So we open our trace with Wireshark, and what we see is that we get traffic from our desktop VM towards our web server on port 443, and we see plenty of retransmissions, right? So with this trace, with having able to determine that traffic is getting to this uplink, but still the application doesn't work. But now we have determined that yes, we have an issue in NSX because traffic is making it into the uplink, but it's not progressing until the web server. So we need to keep troubleshooting.
Yeah, by the way, I love this rule. I have way too many SSH profiles that I have to keep track of. So this really helps me. I can just go into one NSX manager shell, and I have powerful commands that I can use at a VNIC level. I can do different packet capture filters, I believe. So this is really powerful. You know, I can just go to a central machine, and then I can access everything from that central CLI.
Yeah, everything
with read-only privileges. So I'm sure that nothing has changed. No. That's awesome.
Read-only.
Okay. So we have it in NSX. You see the packet getting to the edge. I don't know. Could it be firewall? I don't know if.
Could be firewall, right?
Does this mean I go to the firewall team and now talk to them?
So luckily not, because again, since we have this cross-functional team, I have the skills to check that. So let's go.
That's awesome. Okay.
So we have determined that the traffic makes it up here. Next logical step would be to check if traffic goes through the edge, right? So most of you probably know about the distributed firewall in NSX, with all the micro-segmentation and all that. But the edge also has a perimeter firewall. So we are going to see what's going on in the firewall, and for that we are going to look at the NSX log. So NSX sends these logs for all of its components that you can forward to your favorite syslog server, right? So we are showing LogInsight for several reasons. One is that you as NSX customers are entitled to use LogInsight for free for NSX. And also because it provides these out-of-the-box dashboards that give very interesting information, very visual, about the NSX overall status and the different features. So for example, we can see if there are issues with the edges, if there are issues with the infrastructure, and then we can see feature-by-feature panels like logical switch issues, logical routing. And if we go into the firewall tab, we can see where are we getting traffic from, where this traffic is headed, ports that are permitted, ports that are blocked, firewall rules that are hit. We can see everything from here. So let's go to our environment and check what's going on here. So yeah, the application still doesn't work, but let's open the LogInsight website, right? So here on the left, there is the list of these out-of-the-box dashboards. So we have the overall for infrastructure, we have the ones for logical switching, for logical routing, for bridging, for firewalling, for load balancing. We are focusing on the one for the NSX edge firewall, which is what we are troubleshooting, which is actually the one we have open here on the screen, right? So we can select the time range we are interested in troubleshooting, and after that, it's updated. And here, Let me zoom. So we can see on the first widget that we have drop events. So let's dig deeper until we find what's going on here. So we click on the bar into interactive analytics until we get to see the syslog message itself. So we can see this is a syslog message. Maybe not everybody can see it. But so a syslog message from the NSX edge, the firewall, the action is dropped, and the traffic that is being dropped is sourced from our desktop VM towards our web server on port 443. Right? So the issue is that the firewall, the edge firewall is dropping traffic for our application.
So are these dashboards already there, or you've made these dashboards? And
no, these are already there. I mean, just download the pack and you get them in a few minutes. Right?
Okay,
so
that's awesome.
That's out of the box, I mean. So let's go to NSX console and see what's going on with the NSX Edge firewall. So we go into the Edge Management tab. We edit the properties, and under Manage Firewall, we have the configuration of the Edge firewall, right? And here we can see there is one rule, allow access to web servers, that is disabled. Right? So probably this is the issue why traffic is being dropped. So let's enable it. And let's go back to our app and try again.
Oh, looks like it did something different now.
Yeah, so it's something different, but the application doesn't work, right? So, I mean, so we know traffic is making it up here. Let's confirm now again with the logs if we are going through the edge or not before closing this item, right? So let's go back to login site. Let's refresh here. And now we can see that on the first widget, we have both drop and accept actions here. And in the second and third widgets, we can see that traffic with source, our desktop VM is going through the edge, and traffic destination, our web server, is going through the edge as well. And if we want to confirm further, we can go again into interactive analytics, and now the log message says accept, and it's effectively accepting the traffic for our application. Okay. So we have determined traffic is getting into the uplink, and we have determined traffic is going through the edge firewall, but still the application doesn't work. So what else can be wrong here?
Geez, this looks like one of those where you have several issues which are layered on top of each other till you get to the eventual issue. Although I had a question, geez, can you figure out how the rule got disabled? Or?
Yeah. We are not showing now for time, because we are tight on time, but NSX provides audit logs where you can see all the details. You can see who has changed this rule, which specific change on the rule might be allowed, disabled, might be changing the source destination, so you can see everything at good time. Yeah. That's
excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And so.
Okay, so we know that the traffic is going through the edge. Now,
what is next?
How do we check whether it's reaching the VM or not?
So. Yeah.
I guess we'll use central CLI to do packet capture again?
Could be, so there are several things we can check here, like the routing and all that, but let's find if traffic is making it into the web VM, and for that, we could use central CLI, but we have also another tool for taking traces, which is LiveFlow, which is a one-click trace, which is suitable, for example, for the compute administrators. They can check by themselves if traffic is getting into their VMs before opening a ticket or before contacting the network admin. So it's very simple to use. So let's go and see what we get from this tool. So we go back into NSX console, and the tools are here on the left menu. LiveFlow is under the flow monitoring suite, the third tab, LiveFlow, and the only thing we need to do is to select the VM we want to trace. So this can do almost any IT guy in our organization should be able to do this, right? So we select our web VM, select the VNIC where we want to take the trace, and click Start. And that's it. This is all we need to do. We are tracing now the traffic that gets into this VM. We have a color code here on the right to determine if there are no new flows or flows that have been terminated. And then we can do also some filtering, basic filtering based on source or destination IP address. If we want to narrow down our troubleshooting, we are focusing on the source IP address, our desktop VM. Hit on apply, and also we can change the refresh rate. I will use 15 seconds. So once we are ready, let's go back to the application. Let's refresh. Let's generate more traffic. And back to NSX. And once the 15 seconds timer expires, back. We have the information here. So let's stop. Let's zoom again. And we can see the web server is receiving traffic from our desktop VM towards itself on port 443. So now we know the traffic from the application is going through the edge to the distributed routing until the web VM, and so we have determined two things. Routing is working, and there is no NAT in the middle. Our application probably does not work nice with NAT, and we have determined there is no NAT. So we are good, but
there's still a problem. Okay, so then taking a step further, I'm guessing the web application is probably talking to some sort of an app in the back end. So maybe this is an application infrastructure problem.
Could be an
I don't know if there's much we can do. What do? I punt the ticket to someone else?
Well, no, because still I have these skills for looking at the whole infrastructure, not just the network piece.
Okay.
So I can see the application has several components, the typical 3-tier application, web application database, and also I can know this component sits in different physical servers, right? So now the next step, since traffic makes it into the web server, the next logical step is to troubleshoot the communication between the web and the app, which at the end of the day is also troubleshooting communication between two different physical components. And for that we are using another tool, which is TraceFlow, which is a tool that allows us to inject traffic between any two VMs, traffic with the characteristics we want. So we can insert unicast, multicast, broadcast, TCP, ICMP, UDP, and as the output we get the step-by-step path the traffic follows. And if the traffic is dropped, we get context information about why. So let's go and see what can we see in our environment.
Okay.
So TraceFlow sits in the tools menu as well. And now we need to select two VMs instead of one. So we need to select the source VM, in our case will be the web VM. And as the destination, we select our app VM, which is the communication we are troubleshooting from web to app. As we said, we could select unicast, broadcast, multicast, or we could select ICMP, TCP, UDP. So we are using TCP on port 8443, which is the traffic the application really is using. So this is a real troubleshooting, not just a simple thing, right? And after we are set, we click on trace, and after a few seconds, 5 to 10 typically, we get this output. So we get the step-by-step path the traffic follows, right?
Oh, excellent.
So we can see traffic is being injected at the source VNIC. We can see next that traffic is being received and forwarded by the distributed firewall. And if I click on the link, I can see the details of the rule that is forwarding this traffic, that is allowing this traffic, which is rule 1012, which is from web VMs to app VMs, allow SSH and TCP on 8443. Next, the traffic is encapsulated on the source logical switch, which has a VXLAN ID of 100,002. Next is received and forwarded by the distributed logical router, and if I click on the links, I can get more information from where the traffic is coming from and where it's being sent to. Next is encapsulated on the destination logical switch. I can see its VXLAN ID. And finally, we can see traffic is being forwarded by the source host, and here we lost track of the information, right?
Man, this is amazing. I don't even know how to go about doing this in my physical infrastructure.
Yeah, this is, just think for a while, how would you do this troubleshooting, right?
Awesome.
Jumping from a switch to a router to a firewall in your existing network today, right? That would take a lot of time, and here we have it with one click.
Okay.
So it seems that we have some issue because the source host seems to be unable to communicate with the destination.
Yeah.
So it seems we need to go now into troubleshoot some physical issue.
Wow.
But at least with TraceFlow, if I click here on the link, we get additional information. So at least I know I have to troubleshoot connectivity between the comp1 host and this IP address. This is the problem I'm having now. So I know where to focus my next troubleshooting step. So I know this IP address is the destination host. So before going into deeper troubleshooting, let's look at the vSphere client. Okay, so it's reporting a network connectivity issue for our host, right? So as you may have guessed, this is an issue we have introduced in the network for the demo purposes, so let's go back and fix it quickly running one script, this magic script, fix physical issue.
This is the part where we go off the real demo.
Doesn't work always, unfortunately.
You have to induce physical failures here in virtual LAN.
So let's repeat the trace. Okay, and now there are a few different things, right? So the first thing is that now we have, as a result, we have delivered and green, which looks good. And if we resume where we were, the next step we can see now that traffic is being received by the second host. At destination goes through the firewall again. We can see the details of the firewall rule that is allowing this traffic, and finally it's delivered at the destination, right? So if I go back to the application, let's see if this works or not. Okay. Finally
Excellent.
it works, right? So we have our IoT application running finally after a few troubleshooting steps. So just as a recap, we have been using several NSX native operating tools, the dashboard to look at the overall health, the central CLI to do the packet trace or to retrieve information, routing tables, MAC tables, etc. The login side to look at all the logs of all the infrastructure, in particular the ones for the firewall. Live flow, so that everybody in the team, even the compute guys or the guys that are less skilled, can get any trace and can determine if traffic is making it into their VMs. And finally, trace flow to get this step-by-step traffic path.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Thanks a lot, Angel.
Welcome.
Okay, I'm going to take out my support operational hat and put back on my product management hat. So I'd like to say that this is really amazing for me because I can go to just one UI and with simple set of tools. The idea is to isolate and narrow down what the issue is, rather than having issues bounce off between different teams. That has its incredible benefits to just narrowing down and figuring out what the problem is. So all you need is just a UI and maybe one an SSH session to your manager, and you can at least have a good visibility of what's going on. You can do an end-to-end VM to VM application trace across your entire virtual, which tells you what are the different components that it's going through. It can tell you what the routing tables are, what firewall rule is being applied, if a firewall rule is being dropped, what is the exact firewall rule that's being dropped. That's really incredibly powerful to just as a sanity or as a troubleshooting in order to check what your VM application path looks like. And we'll keep building more and more of these tools to help you make troubleshooting easier in your virtual environment. So while we focus on troubleshooting tools, we also have a ton of monitoring and visibility tools that you can leverage. We've clearly run out of time, so I wanted to just let you guys know and be aware of the fact that we have a whole bunch of other tools that you can leverage as well. So if you're already using SNMP traps to monitor some of your environments, networking virtualization will fit right in, right? So our NSX manager will collect all these SNMP events from different components within the NSX environment, and it can deliver it to your SNMP collector. So all these environments get reported as events. These events, you can view it from the NSX manager as well, and you can view it on your NOCs. You have various other flexibility in terms of controlling what events you want to deliver. You can group events for flexibility. You can send it to multiple collectors, and different options that you can take. Another powerful tool for security operations is when you talk to a lot of security folks, you need to really figure out beforehand what are my rules that I'm going to set on for my application. Because a lot of times you don't even know what all the protocols that the application is going to talk to. So you can really leverage the live flow feature, run it on a particular VM, extract all the flows, and you can use this tool within NSX called Application Rule Manager, where you can ask it to analyze all the flows, and that can create rules based on the traffic that it sees on the VMs. You can once you have these rules, you can validate it, make sure that they look right, and all you need to do is publish your firewall rules, and you're good. So this is really a handy tool in order for you to determine, hey, what are the VM flows that are going through my VM, and what security DFW rules I want to create for these tools, right? You may have something which is going out. I was recently talking to someone. When they analyze this, they realize that, oh, I have my VM talking to a server in Japan and in Russia, and that I didn't know of. And once we did this analysis, we found that, oh, these IP addresses are actually belonging to somewhere where I don't think I should get those traffic. So you can really use this as a periodic thing to figure out what flows the VM is seeing, and you can use that to create your firewall rules. There's a great session on microsegmentation which covers this tool in addition to all the other stuff that I would highly recommend. It's by two of our technical product managers, Stein and Jeff. It's today at 3:30 in case you'd like to know more about security operations. Another great tool, so we talked about Traceflow, which points to issues in physical. When you're dealing with your networking and your application, you really focused on not just your virtual, but also your physical. So you want that end-to-end view of your virtual and physical. This is something that NSX, being a virtual LAN, cannot provide. So you need some tool external that can understand NSX and consume all the rich functionality that NSX has, and also consume some of the physical functionality that you have from your existing physical switches, routers, and firewalls. And VRNI or Verni is a great tool for you to do that. Instead of talking more about the tools, we'll just show you a very quick demo of this tool. Steve? I need the mic.
Yeah, thank you. So this will be much shorter. So there are two main, VRNI can do many things. There are two main use cases, which is the plan security one, which allows you, VRNI shows you all your resources grouped based on different grouping mechanisms, and you can see the connections that go and come to your resources. You can group them by VLAN, by VXLAN, by subnet, by vCenter folder, by cluster, by NSX security tag, security group, or you can define your own grouping based on your needs. So you can create your own application and then see them in this pie chart. And by clicking on any piece of the pie chart, you get more details. You get details of the flows that come and go, but also you get recommended firewall rules to do microsegmentation, to onboard microsegmentation. And you can export these firewall rules into XML format that can be later imported into the NSX firewall. And the other thing that people love most is the visibility on the physical. I can tell the system, show me the path between this VM and, for example, an IP address, which could be physical or virtual. And it gives us these nice graphics. On the left-hand side, we have a layer 3 diagram, and on the right, we have the diagram that shows the connection for our VM. So the beauty is that on these components, everything is contextual. If I hover over them, I get a bit more details. And if I click on the different components, I get much more details. So for example, I can click on the NSX firewall icon here, and I see the firewall rules that apply to this communication. I can do the same on the Palo Alto integration with NSX, and I can see the integration rules that apply to this communication. I can see this is a NSX distributed router. I can see the NSX edge router. I can click and get more details. I can see that we are running OSPF, some information about routing. But also we can do it on the physical components as well. So I can click here on this switch and to check that this is a Arista layer 3 switch. We can see the routing tables that are applied to this communication, and the same goes for the next box, which is a physical Palo Alto device. So I can see the communication end-to-end, not only the virtual side, but also on which physical devices I'm going through. And on the right-hand side, if I click on Show Labels, I can see that 7 and 9 are Ethernet 14, meaning that the traffic from my VM is going into the physical network on port 14 of these two physical switches, which are Arista switches, right? So if I have a troubleshooting issue, I can check all details here. This is an operations tool that brings together physical and virtual.
All right, thanks, Angel. So this is one of the other tools that you have in your chest of tools that you can use for end-to-end physical and virtual troubleshooting, visibility, monitoring. You don't have to use it. You can use all your custom tools right now that you have today. But this is an option in case you guys would like to use something which is integrated with, and we can quite honestly integrate with any of the other tools that are out there as well. And that's the point of this slide, that you're not just limited to some of the tools that we have with VMware, but you can really leverage a wide set of ecosystem tools that you have. So we've already demoed some of the native tools, and I'm not going to go over it. All I wanted to mention over here is that if you have existing environments, investments in some of the external tools, NSX is consumable via APIs. Everything can be got out of NSX and can be fed to some of the external tools that you have in your environments today. Those are just operational tools. Rest assured that we have a whole bunch of, NSX and VMware is a platform, and we integrate with, we love our partners. We integrate with a whole bunch of our partners to solve whatever deeper advanced capabilities that you want to use. On the networking side, we have an advanced framework where we can intelligently give some of these packets and deliver it to our partners. So we have two typical integrations with our partners. One is via the API. The other one is a deeper integration where they can use our SDKs to actually extract packets and provide you more visibility and security into your environments. We have another session which goes into the details of how getting this exact visibility and integration for what we call a partner integration framework that we've developed. And if you guys have external tools that you're using, you're considering how to integrate your VMware and external tools, this would be a great session to kind of go and get a high-level overview of what the technology looks like. All right, so the rest of the slides are just for your reference when you see it later. Please give us feedback, things that can be improved. Last year we were told to get a lot of tools, more technical, so we've gone a little more technical and given some of the tools. Let us know what you'd like to see more, hopefully things that you liked as well, so that we can keep doing it more. Angel and I are going to be here in case you have any questions. If you want to go through that transformational journey, you want more information, come talk to us. We can definitely help out. We'll be here for the next 10-15 minutes. And we have some giveaways as well in case you guys don't already have your bag full of giveaways. Anyways, so thanks a lot.